They built cities with streets like a grid, baths so exacting they could rival modern pools, and seals stamped with a script we still cannot read. Then, around 3,700 years ago, their great cities fell silent, not in a blaze of empire, but in puzzles, abandoned streets, sealed granaries, and a script that refuses to tell its name. Who were the people of the Indus, Harappa, Mohenjo-daro, and hundreds of lost towns? And where did they go? Long before empires of the Greeks or Persians, long before the names etched in later epics, the Indus floodplain hummed with life. Along the broad rivers that fed the northwest of the subcontinent, communities grew from scattered villages to planned cities. Starting around 3,300 BCE, small farming towns along the Indus and its tributaries merged into something new, a network of towns and cities connected by trade, craft, and an astonishingly consistent material culture. This is the world archaeologists call the Indus Civilization, sometimes Harappan, after one of its first excavated sites. From roughly 3,300 to 2,600 BCE, settlements expanded, mud brick houses, kilns, and long-distance exchange. Harappa in the Punjab, Mohenjo-daro in Sindh, and dozens of smaller towns developed shared styles, uniform brick sizes, standardized weights and measures, and pottery that traveled hundreds of miles. The Indus was not a single monolith, but a network, a civilization of cities that spoke through objects rather than kings. Between about 2600 and 1900 BCE, the Indus reached its urban peak. Cities were remarkably planned, streets ran in grids, large public baths suggest communal ritual or hygiene, drainage systems channeled water away from homes, granaries indicate administrative storage. Craftspeople produced jewelry, bronze tools, and tiny carved seals bearing animal motifs and enigmatic signs. Trade routes reached Mesopotamia. We find Indus carnelian beads in distant markets and Mesopotamian records that speak of a land called Meluha, likely the Indus. The evidence shows a complex, sophisticated society, but one without obvious palaces, kings' tombs, or monumental propaganda. Power here is subtle, built into planning and shared systems. Perhaps the most haunting problem is the script, short inscriptions on seals and pottery, about a few symbols long, repeated in patterns. Over 4,000 signs survive, but texts are short and our Rosetta Stone is missing. Without long inscriptions, without bilingual tablets, the script resists decipherment. Is it Proto-Dravidian, an isolate, a logosyllabic system? Scholars argue, but the Indus people remain largely silent. They left no historical narratives for us to read, only durable traces of daily life. The archaeological record shows bustling craft production, bead workshops, seal carving, copper smelting, and cotton textiles, far earlier than many expect. Standardized weights suggest regulated trade. Dock-like structures imply maritime exchange with the Persian Gulf and Mesopotamia. People ate wheat, barley, and local pulses. They herded cattle and buffalo and fished the river. The civilization was not hermetic. It was entangled in long-distance exchange and local specialization. We glimpse devotional life in artistic motifs. The so-called Pashupati figure seated in a yogic pose on some seals, horned animals, unicorn-like creatures, and ritual vessels. Were these gods, shamans, civic emblems? Without texts, meanings are debated. Still, the seals and terracotta figurines suggest spiritual life was woven into everyday objects, a quiet, practiced religiosity rather than grand temples. After about 1900 BCE, the Indus world began to change. Cities were gradually abandoned or transformed. The archaeologist's record reveals shifting pottery styles, reduced craft standardization, and the decline of long-distance trade. Why? Multiple lines of evidence point to environmental stress, shifts in monsoon patterns, gradual aridification, river course changes, especially the drying or diversion of the Gagar-Hakra system, sometimes associated with the mythical Sarasvati. Other studies highlight social disruptions, shifts in trade networks, loss of key markets in Mesopotamia, or internal reorganization. It is likely not a single cataclysm, but an accumulation of pressures. an epical transition rather than a one-time collapse. What happened to the people? The archaeological picture suggests both movement and continuity. In some regions, urban centers shrink and villages continue. In others, populations seem to migrate eastwards into the Ganges plain. Material culture changes. New pottery forms and technologies appear, but many everyday practices persist. Genetic and linguistic debates complicate simplistic stories. Modern South Asian populations carry multiple ancestral threads. The idea of a total sudden disappearance is misleading. Instead, the Harappan world reconfigured. People adapted, moved, and merged with other evolving communities. Later, Indian texts speak of rivers and peoples. The Rig Veda mentions a river called Sarasvati, mighty in ancient memory, but later described as drying. Some scholars connect this memory to the Ghaggar-Hakra channels that once flowed vigorously across the region. But caution is vital. Textual memory and archaeological data are separate sources and must be linked carefully. Myths preserve echoes but not precise maps. Still, the convergence of geological records and textual imagery invites reflection. Climate and river shifts shaped the fate of ancient lives and our stories. Modern techniques bring new clarity. Pollen cores, sediment studies, and isotope data maps changing rainfall. Archaeobotanical evidence shows crop shifts. Faunal remains trace diet changes. Ancient DNA studies from South Asia are still emerging, but reveal complex ancestries, mixtures of local hunter-gatherer groups, early farmers, and later influxes. These studies support a nuanced narrative, demographic continuity with admixture and mobility, not an instant vanishing act. The Indus civilization challenges our assumptions about what civilization looks like. It flourished without kingly monuments, produced standardized systems across vast distances, and showed social resilience. Its silence, the undeciphered script, asks us to listen differently to pottery shards, sewer lines, bead workshops. The story is not a mystery begging for a single solution, but an open archive demanding careful listening. So who were they? They were farmers and artisans, merchants and planners, people who built cities with sanitation centuries ahead of many later societies. They were neighbors in an interconnected ancient world. When their cities faded, human networks simply rewove. They became part of the long story of South Asia, their inventions folded into later lives. The Indus people did not vanish. They changed form. Their script remains a whisper, their drains and seals a durable legacy. If you enjoyed this voyage into a silent past, subscribe for more deep dives into history's unanswered questions. Share the mystery with someone curious, and meet us next time at Mythantis, where the past is more than ruins. It is a living puzzle. Please like, subscribe, and ring the bell.